Welcome back to That Which Binds Us. I am Jack, one of your co-hosts.
And I'm George, the other co-host.
And today we have, if I do say, the most beautiful guest we've ever had on the podcast. Madie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Wow, that's high praise.
I mean, we had Ryan on last time.
Actually,
I'll give it to Ryan.
that is fair.
I'll hand it over to him.
He was butt naked on the podcast, as you'll hear.
Serious?
Long story.
No, he wasn't. It's a long story.
I was like, wow, I mean, I'm not doing that, so he can win the
Can't compete
prize.
with that, to be honest.
No, and I'm not trying to. But yeah, you do have to say that. I'm Madie, Jack's wife, and in all the other episodes, I feel like I'm referred to as Jack's girlfriend.
Have I said that?
Yeah, my girlfriend at the time, Madie, as if like you had so many past girlfriends.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, give the context for the people.
Yes, I'll be the girlfriend at the time.
So this is my wife at the time, Madie. She's on the podcast with us today.
Present tense.
Yeah. Madie, George, and I have an interesting relationship, the three of us. Madie and I got married in June of 2020, and George moved in with us in August of 2020.
Was it that soon? Maybe.
I think it was pretty immediately after that.
Nice.
And it was maybe even July. But George lived in our spare bedroom for about a year. And that year was a very bonding experience for the three of us. George is at our house twice a week now. I mean, especially now that we're doing the podcast. But board games, watching TV.
Pause, John.
Took me a second.
That's a great cut. John Mulaney, if you haven't seen John Mulaney, highly
He's
recommend.
way funnier than any of us.
Yeah, here's the link to his stuff. Go check it out.
He has a new special out on Netflix, just launched like a week ago.
Think we get John on this podcast? Or
Yeah.
what's the barrier to entry
Are we
there?
getting paid for that sponsorship? Or
I'll give him a call. So yeah, we have an interesting relationship because George lived with us for so long. Now the three of us are inseparable, and George and I had started this podcast, and it was not a question of if Madie would be on; it was a question of when. We wanted her on pretty much immediately. We were throwing out ideas, and we couldn't figure out exactly what we wanted to talk about. And then Madie hit us with a great concept for an episode that I'm very excited to break into. And Madie, if you want, can you kind of explain what it is that hit you and how you brought it to us and what exactly we're looking at talking about today?
Sure. The idea to talk about is play. And when George and Jack, when you guys were talking to me about the podcast and the idea of the things that bind us together as human beings and what connects us and like what are the threads that link us together, I thought about play and creativity, and it's just something that's been on my mind lately because I've been trying to be better about having fun and playing and just being in the moment and it not having to be something like productive. And we've been having like karaoke nights lately at our house, which are solely for play. It's like just be stupid, sing really loud, dance around, like be human, be a kid again. And I'm trying to like tap into parts of myself that aren't as natural for me. So I was like, let's talk about play, because we've thrown out some other things that are topics I'm interested in. But I don't know. I think play is just fun and a unique idea of something that binds people together, but that a lot of us lose and try to rid ourselves of by the time we reach adulthood. So
Madie brought that up to us. George, did you have any thoughts on that? You loved that idea when she first brought it up.
Yeah, I loved it. Looking at my own life, I'm like in the beginning stages of adulthood, like graduating college recently, and all of the just like adult life problems start hitting you, and how to balance that all with finding a way to still play and just balance it all. I'm really curious like you guys are a few years older than me and have been being adults for a bit longer, so I'm like figuring it all out and I have a lot of questions, and I'd really admire the way you've been approaching it recently, Madie. So I was just excited to hear about it and talk about it.
Love it.
Great. So the first question I have, or the way I think would be helpful to dive into this, is start from the beginning. I tend to do this a lot, but I think that's kind of the nature of how we do this, is we're just telling stories. And so I think a good way to talk about play is telling us a story of your childhood and what it was like and what play looked like for you, or what play wasn't allowed to look like for you. Yeah, why play and what that looked like at the beginning.
Yeah.
I got hit with the painful amount of self-awareness of this thing that I'm working on, which is over-explaining myself. And halfway through over-explaining myself,
you could ask it one more way, though. You could like restate the question for me.
Yeah, 4 more times actually, just to make sure we get it clear. Yeah.
So what was the question?
Oh my God. We're never going to get anywhere.
Okay, yeah. What did play look like for you as a kid?
Yeah. I kind of have 2 schools of thought around play for me as a kid. One is that I have a few like very distinct memories of playing. One of them is at a particular friend's house, where her house to me is just like imaginative play. That's all I think of. She lived out in the country and had like this little, in Stranger Things, when he has that little hideout in the woods where that's like where he plays. It wasn't near that cool, but she had like this little stool, and we like put this drape kind of in front of this little like hideout in the woods pretty much. And that's where we would go sit and, imagine we were whatever, like princesses.
That's so fun.
Yeah, it was a blast. I just remember like sitting out there and playing, and it felt like an like complete escape, like just going out to her house. It was a 20-minute drive. And then, yeah, we'd go out to the woods, or we'd play with dolls and be like, like living in a house together. I'm the mom and you're the dad. We would like play roles in a way that I didn't do a lot of other places. And so I think that's why I remember her house so specifically for play. We would make up plays together. We would perform them, make up skits. We were always, playing. And so I have really, really fond memories of her specifically in terms of like the freer, more playful side of myself. And then when I think of like my home life as a child, I have a couple memories of playing with my sister. She had this like puppet, like a puppet show stage kind of, and we would play like newscaster. And so, like, on stage, one of us would be, like, the newscaster, and the other one...
It's kind of fun.
Yeah. One of us would be like, oh, yeah, I got in the car wreck today, and we'd, like, interview the other one about it or whatever. I don't know. It's kind of morbid, maybe. That. But, so, yeah, I have some memories of that. But I think at home as a kid, it was a lot more of almost being, like, parentified or... things going on, and it felt more stressful. And so I was in my room a lot alone. And so I didn't really have anyone to play with. I was just it became quiet solitude to like get away. And I would write or journal or read. But I wouldn't just like be loud and goofy and silly. That was at my friend's house.
So when you say parentified, can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I think I was brought into the adult space based on the adult situations going on in my house and in my family. And so I was naturally aware of what was going on and had parents like talking about that. And, my sister and I would talk about that. And, obviously there were times we would just like lay in mom's bed and watch TV and watch Gilmore Girls and, just like have fun and be girls hanging out. But yeah, there were also a lot of like serious conversations. And I was the youngest one in my house. And so a lot of, emotional conversations. And I've always been a more quiet, like thoughtful person. George, I think we kind of have similar demeanors, And when you're quiet and a good listener, people just naturally think like, oh, I'll talk to you and you'll listen to all my problems.
So you kind of adopted a sort of role of listening and kind of caretaking in this home, I guess, in this dynamic. Yeah. So you're caretaking, you're listening, you're taking care of people, and that doesn't give you a whole lot of space to be a kid and be confused or have fun and whatever. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. Well, and I didn't want to be annoying or be silly or say something stupid. Like I was so
Yeah.
afraid to like make a joke and it not land or like
Right.
do something stupid that people are laughing at me. I hated that idea of like people laughing at me or me being the one to have attention and maybe it goes sour. So if I could just be quiet and not get attention, and then any attention I did get was like, okay, maybe somebody needs something and I can help. But I wasn't gonna like, bust out into song or crack a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All those like vulnerable ways of expressing yourself.
Yes.
It was all calculated, controlled ways of expressing yourself.
Yeah, I love that word because play is so vulnerable. And it does open you up to just be like, I am here in this moment. I actually have one, like, maybe it's a core memory. But it's from just a couple years ago, so I don't know if that counts. But anyways, I was at a like pizza restaurant picking up my takeout, and it was taking forever. And I was like standing in line at the counter waiting on my pizzas. And there was a mom standing next to me with her daughter, who I would maybe say was like 7. And the music in the restaurant was really loud, and the daughter just started like dancing her butt off. Like she was just like dancing around, spinning around, dancing to the music, closing her eyes. Like she was so in the moment. And this is creepy now that I'm about to say this, but I watched her and started crying, just thinking like how free and happy she was. Like she did not care that she's dancing in a Pizza Hut with people around eating, and she was just like totally in the moment. And I cried thinking like, I wonder if I ever would have done that as a kid. And I wonder at what age you lose that. Like I just kept wishing to the universe that that would never be taken away from her. Like I don't even know her, but I just want her to dance her butt off in Pizza Hut for the rest of her life.
So how does that make you a better person though, if you're not going to like, work on yourself? It's not very productive of you.
Thank you, George, for being the voice in the back of my mind at every moment as I'm trying to just have fun.
No, I'm just trying to think of, so like there's the part of your life and your story that is like you had things thrust on you that parentified you. What about those experiences are unique to like Madie and how she reacted to them? And because like anyone would react in certain ways of being parentified if that's what happened. What makes Maddie's experience of that unique to like you?
That's a great question. The first thought that came to my mind was, while yes, I feel like there were a lot of adult things going on in my childhood, I also wouldn't like change any of that. Like I do think it's important that I am who I am today and am like pretty thoughtful and perceptive of people's emotions around me, and am able to pick up on people's cues and like be a sounding board of people. Like the skills I learned are important enough that I'm not I don't want to insinuate that I would have done something different or I guess I'm just like thankful for my experiences, even if there were things that were challenging. But to get to your question, I think, part of the challenge with that was just my personality and my demeanor and the way that situation became really hard for me specifically based on who I am. And a couple things I think play into that. The first one that comes to mind is religion. Trauma within a religious context, there's even more pressure to like be good. There's a way out if you believe in God and follow the rules. So I naturally wanted like a list of rules to follow and check off and be good, which then plays into me being a 1 on the Enneagram, which you want to be good. So if you're in a context where you're told you can do this, this, and that to be good, and you're an Enneagram 1, naturally you want to do everything you can to be seen as like you're doing everything right and not making mistakes.
Which in your scenario, the things that are given to you that are being good is being mature, being on top of it, being quiet, not making the joke, not dancing in the line for Pizza Hut. Like, is that kind of like those are the things you're benefiting from acting in this way, which is being parentified or parentifying yourself, as opposed to being a kid and playing. I think so. And as you said that, it also made me think, I think I was
I was taught to intuit other people's emotions more than feel my own. And so I could just sense how me playing affected other people's emotions. And I couldn't sense the way that me playing was making me feel.
Yeah, because you didn't need to.
I haven't really thought about it that way, but I remember very early in my childhood thinking so and so is only doing that for attention, and
Yes.
I don't want to do that. And I'm a burden to my parents or my siblings, whoever's attention I would be wanting to grab in that situation. I'm a burden. And so, yeah, I know that so well in my younger self too, that I became very keenly aware of those situations, and I didn't want to be that kid.
Right. And you're also very perceptive of other people's emotions. So yeah, it's like my behavior is how it will make other people feel.
Yeah. Your feelings in it don't exist at all.
Right.
Don't matter at all.
Right. It becomes about how it's going to make other people feel. And it's also maybe like somewhat like, I think I'm a wing 9 and I think you're a 9, which then you're, like really want to keep people happy. And so it's like, oh, if I can think of the stress I might cause by joking around and running around Target like silly with my parents versus them just being happy if I stand here and help them shop.
Yeah.
It's like, well, shit, I'm going to help them shop. Like, I don't want the stress of them yelling at me.
Yeah.
No. Nope.
Yeah.
course.
You get told you're a good kid a lot, though.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, you're so mature for your age.
That's what I was
Yes,
gonna ask,
mature
is
for your age.
There's another layer of like society, which we haven't really even talked about. You've like trauma and Christianity, but there's also society which like tells us be productive. Like there is a productive way to act and to be like. And yeah, you hear that all the time. You're so like mature beyond your years. And to me, that's like sad. That's an expectation that no one should have on themselves. Like you don't need to be mature when you're 8 years old. You shouldn't be mature when you're 8 years old.
Yeah.
But you're constantly being rewarded and fed. If I'm mature, people like that. And I'm improving and progressing in society as long as I'm not playing or dancing in line for Pizza Hut and I am taking care of this situation, shopping next to my mom, being helpful.
Yeah. Well, that's also always putting your brain in future state rather than present state because you're thinking like, oh, how will I be helpful if I do this rather than just like what feels right to me right now. I think that's why that girl standing in line for pizza was so like profound to me because she was just in the moment. She was just feeling the moment. She was not looking at her mom. Like she wasn't thinking of the next thing she should do.
Yeah, no cares.
Yeah, it's just like that present state versus. But okay, so you said society, which made me think, okay, I know you guys went to a super small school, but did you have like a class clown or someone who was like, if you think back,
Yeah, we did.
like, okay, who was your class clown?
Like, who was he? What was his name?
Okay, that's what's interesting to me because if you ask someone about a class clown, it's always a he. Okay, not always.
No, you're right.
I didn't even what was his name?
His name. It's always a dude. Okay, I mean, I say always. I'm sure there are times class clown's a lady, but like, I think that's a thing about society too that played into like my specific fear of playing was that in society, the funny, loud people who get to just goof off are the guys.
But boys will be boys.
Exactly. And I know you just had a masculinity episode, so I won't like derail it for that.
No,
But,
I don't know if we really got into that, like how boys are allowed to be fuck ups until like 19 years old or 22 years old. Women have to be put together by about 16.
Yes. All the class clowns I can think of in my grade were guys. There was like one gal and that's actually the gal who I would like play with a lot too, that I was talking about her house being the one that was so fun.
And she was the class clown.
She would make more jokes than any other girl. Yeah. Or she could like burp in the middle of class and we'd all laugh. And I didn't know any other girl who could just burp for fun.
It kind of says something that the only place you felt safe to be a kid was at the home of the girl who felt safe being a kid in class and burping in class. Like she had some sort of freedom and space to experience childhood.
Yeah.
Opposed to most other girls in your class.
Yeah, that's very true. But yeah, sorry I like walked you into that trap, but I'm really glad you said
No,
he. I was like, if he says a girl, this all goes down the drain. But yeah, I think that was part of it too, was guys like, yeah, they get C's and they aren't in the spelling bee, but like, I'm a girl. I need to have my shit together and get good grades and be a lady.
Yeah, I would not have drawn that out from my like I have to hear that from you, because I didn't pick up on that going through it, and I don't even know if now I really knew that to that degree. But it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah, I don't know why either, but when I think of like, especially when I think of middle school, and maybe that's because like girls' brains are maturing faster or something like that, but that's a cop-out.
I think that's a lie told by the government. I think that's bullshit. I think that's
and
so
now
bullshit.
conspiracy theorists.
This is conspiracy time with Jack.
Yeah.
Conspiracy Jack is back.
No, I think that's just like, that's the patriarchy saying,
Yeah.
oh yeah, boys' brains are dumb and bad, so they're allowed to be dumb and bad until they're this age. Girls are, I bet, smarter or something. And
Yeah.
I just think there's no true like nuance in understanding the society that makes people the way they are. And like, no, women have the weight of the world and the weight of their bodies on them at age 12. They can't afford to have fun. They have to sit with their legs crossed all the time. And men are doing cartwheels, and just like, of course women aren't allowed to have fun from ages 12 on up.
Yeah, I would agree. I can remember guys in my class like chasing the teachers around, and like we killed our class pet. But by we, I mean like the guys, they just like harassed this rabbit until it had a stroke or something.
It just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, and I can like picture all the ladies in the class like yelling at them and asking them to stop and feeling all this responsibility, which I do think was compounded by being in a Christian school. So you have gender roles within religion, which are like women have the responsibility, but they're kept small and powerless. So like men have the responsibility to, like be the head of the church or the house or whatever. So they have all the power. And if you have the power, you can just, fuck off and do whatever you want.
You get to decide when men's brains are fully formed.
Exactly. And yeah, we have the responsibility, but we don't have the power. So we have to prove ourselves.
Okay, so you talked about religion and that effect on like play and that like childhood development and losing a sense of childhood at all. I think originally when you brought this up as an idea, I also resonated with it. While I agree and stand by that men don't have nearly as much structure around them as women do, I also did feel a lot of structure around myself. Like I resonated with the idea of play because I didn't feel like I allowed myself to play in high school at all. Like I never ever understood high school like TV shows and movies where like kids would go out partying, kids would go out drinking. Like that was not my experience at all in high school because I took myself so seriously. And something you had said earlier was about like men have the pressure of like being the head of the household, being the head of the church, and for whatever reason, and this could be, George, to your point earlier, this could be the way I'm wired, like the way my wiring reacted to society and Christian culture, that I just felt like this is the only way to do it. But in high school, I took everything so deathly serious that I didn't play either, at least unless there was some reward, there was some benefit to it, where I could like draw a line. I'm becoming a better person. I'm, whatever, I'm bringing this to the table. But I felt really excited to talk about this because you and I dated all through high school, and we were buzzkills. I felt like we were buzzkills. Maybe not. Maybe I was just a buzzkill, and I'm trying to put that on you to make myself feel better about myself. But I think of the class clowns in high school, and I'm almost now envious that they were able to be class clowns. And I'm envious, and I'm also embarrassed of the way I treated them then, where I would be like, grow up. Like, this is life or death, eternal life or death. And you are fucking away by joking around and making, like, what, like, but you're 14. No 14-year-old should be walking around with a stick up their butt like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I want to know what your experience is. I do that a lot where I just tell people what their experience was because I assume it's the same as mine. But I would like to know your high school experience too, because you talked about like middle school and childhood where you're supposed to be playing. But high school, it may be a little more nuanced as to whether you're actually supposed to be playing or not. Yeah, what was your experience with that?
I haven't really thought about high school very much in terms of play. I mean, I think I was definitely way too mature and took things too seriously and did that because of all the other times I was rewarded for doing that. It's interesting to hear you talk about your perception of yourself in high school, because I found you really refreshing in high school because I thought you were really like funny and playful. So it's almost like there's two kinds of play. Like,
Yeah, interesting.
you were loud and playful in a way that wasn't like maybe goofy or immature, but in a way that made other people want to be around you and made you popular and made people feel safe and like they were having fun with you. So I see you as way more playful in high school than I felt like I was. But I'm sure you felt all that pressure to like be a good person, make the right decisions, not be a kid, and be loud and playful.
Yeah.
So maybe it was an act. I don't know. Do you feel like it was an act?
Yeah, there was an end game to it. Like, it was, if I wasn't making friends or inviting people to Bible studies, or like all of those things were how I brought forth the kingdom of heaven. That was my higher calling, was to be a friendly guy that people wanted to be friends with me so I could share Jesus with them. I think a lot of that was subliminal. I don't think I actively was telling my brain that that's what I was doing, but I wouldn't have been doing that if I didn't feel like I was making relationships, making connections, bringing Jesus to people, reading the Bible. Like, there were end games to all of those things. I never did anything just for doing it, other than, and if I did, I was deeply ashamed of it. Like, there are times where George and I would play like video games, or we would play like Star Wars role player or something. And I want to get into that later too, but I felt really ashamed of that. I remember when I told my cousins I couldn't come over and spend the night at their house anymore because I'm in high school now and I'm too old to be doing that. Like, I felt like it would be shameful for me to do a childish thing. Yeah.
Did you hit that line, George, of like, okay, I can't be childish anymore? Or do you have memories of moments of that?
I don't. That's tough. I had little brothers that I was really excited to experience things with. I had 3 of them, and a lot of our friends intersected. So, yeah, that's tough. I don't know. Not as distinctly as the cousins thing you're saying, how you didn't want to go spend the night at their house because of that.
Can you walk me through what play looked like for you? Like, what that timeline looks like for you? How have you always had a pretty normal relationship with play, or when did play stop being available to you, or is it?
I had a very self-aware play moment a few months ago, where I feel like I noticed it was like a problem. So I have a bunch of friends who play Smash, a video game, and we go to tournaments, and it's a lot of fun. And so there's a whole community of people that I've met through that. And when you meet a new community, there's a lot of the fun, entertaining things they like to do, just probably aren't going to be the things you grew up doing. So one of the things we would do is we'd be at someone's house, and there'd be a large group of us, and we would play this dating simulation game. This like video game where you're and it was like a weird one. It was like monsters and vampires, all these random characters that were mythical and whatever. And so we'd all be a character, and then you'd make decisions based on the questions they're asking, and you decide what answer you want to do. It's something I'd never done before, and the like weirdest, most embarrassing part about it is that we were all reading out the dialogue on the screen in the voice of the person we think their voice would be. So like I had a girl, for instance, and I luckily didn't go first because I didn't know what the vibe was. Like how hard are we selling out these voices that we're doing? And the first guy, he's probably was the class clown of his school growing up. So he set the tone for this event. But he just went all out for this female voice, like high pitched as fuck. And that's who I had to follow. And it just like hit me in this moment. Kind of the Pizza Hut story you're bringing up, where I was just so envious that he was able to just lay it all out on the line, reading dialogue for this zombie in this dating simulation for this girl in a really high-pitched, vulnerable voice. I was so envious of that because I couldn't. Like, I like wimped out on my voice and was like, no one cared that I wimped out. No one was pressuring me to do anything. But I was just really like, a little embarrassed at myself that like I couldn't just play in this moment and just be here with everyone and just enjoy myself because everyone else is having a blast. And I wanted to do that. It's kind of like karaoke that you've been throwing on recently.
Yeah.
It felt similar to that. Like, you don't need to have a good voice. You don't need to be funny. You don't need to do any of that. We just want to like be in a room where we're all expressing ourselves freely in a judgment-free zone. And that was the space, and I couldn't get there.
You couldn't embrace it.
No, I couldn't. So yeah, I had a very distinct moment with that recently, where I felt like I needed to like work on that area of my life because I wanted to be a part of that.
What's funny to me is it seems like the people who don't care what people think of them, like they just don't give a fuck what you think, and they like will do the silly voice or play or do whatever they want. They're the ones who people gravitate to and like have so much fun with.
Yeah.
But then
Totally.
like when I'm nervous, like, oh, what are people going to think of me? Then I'm kind of cringy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
you make it worse for yourself.
yes. And so it's like I want to not care, but I do care. And then I'm like, are the people who are really funny and have the good vampire dating voice, do they care? Like, or are they just really outgoing?
Right. And I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I think as a kid, I looked at it as like, damn, they're just legitimately that funny.
Yeah.
This is insane. They just came up with that on the spot. That's crazy. It was mostly with humor because I feel like I had really funny friends growing up. And they would even tell me this. One of my friends was like, I was like a great audience for him. Like,
Yeah.
because I thought he was hilarious and I don't know, would laugh at anything. So I was always jealous of that. But yeah, all that to say, I think growing up, I used to think they were just naturally that witty and funny. And now I'm realizing they just, were pretty shameless.
But you think because they grew up in a setting that rewarded them for being childish?
Yeah, I think that was was emphasized for them. Like I was even thinking about the class clown thing, how we looked at them as like they were free to be themselves. But I'm sure they don't look at that experience as they were free to be themselves, because I'm sure they got called into the vice principal's office and the teachers were getting onto them and they had detention and they were like all these privileges were taken away from them. I'm sure they were like, what do you mean? Like people were on my ass.
Society was crashing down on them, telling them stop being this way.
Right. But I do think your experience specifically, like you're so intentional about getting to the root of play and like why it's important that I'm just like so interested in. It's really cool. Question.
Yeah.
And you might have answered this at the beginning, but what spurred on the drive to like understand play more? What happened? It seems pretty recent.
Yeah. That's a good question.
What motivated you to get to the bottom of it?
Yeah. Oh man, I wish I had like a very succinct answer, but I think I first started thinking about this when I was doing some like specific meditation every morning, and I would picture like the different versions of myself, and one of them would be my younger self. And I would just kind of ask her, like, what are you needing? What are you wanting? And sometimes she would just want to like dance or like be silly or whatever. And so I started doing that. And at first I felt so weird. Like I'm in my room alone meditating before work with my like younger self dancing, but I'm alone. Like no one else is here. And I'm just like dancing around or like moving my arms or being very like, I know it's a buzzword, but like embodied, if you will.
I do.
I will.
Thank you. So yeah, I think that kind of started it, but that was maybe a couple years ago. And that was just my first thought of like, oh, I'm pretty uptight. Like I'm not very good at this. And then, everything I wanted to do became so rigid. Like, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to become a yoga teacher. I'm going to do this. And everything had a goal and I was accomplishing and I was being a one. about it. And they were like good creative things. It was all me being like, oh, I think I'm creative. Like I was never the creative. I'm a project manager of creatives at work. So I've always been like, oh, I pair nicely with the creative. I pair nicely with the visionary.
But you're not the one.
But I'm not that. I'm just the one who helps them get something done, which I think there's some truth to that. But I am creative. I like to play. I can dream. So last year was like writing my book, becoming a yoga teacher. And then this year I was like, I don't want to make some goal that like I have to check off a box. I just want to be. And then I was like, how do you be? And I just looked at like, who do I like and who do I want to be more like? And whose house do I go to that just lets me like take a deep breath and just enjoy? And those are the people who are like weird as shit and just like fun.
Yeah.
You know?
And usually artistic, creative people.
Oh yeah, they're like burning sage and incense and like, or what, I mean, it doesn't have to be that, but I don't know. I'm just like picturing someone who's like fruity and fun and out there and being themselves. But even if being yourself is like whatever hobby it might be or whatever art or creativity or whatever. So yeah, it was like, how do I stretch myself? And that's kind of how these karaoke nights came out, which actually comes from my love of like dancing. I love to dance, but I never wanted to dance as a kid because I was always like a foot taller than everybody else. So you could see me on the dance floor and my friends made fun of me for being awkward dancing. But so I loved it, but I didn't want anyone to like see me and I couldn't hide because I was so big. So yeah, now I just like dance in the kitchen and I wanted to have dance nights. And then we were like, let's just do karaoke dance nights. Like, let's just have people over to just be and play and have fun. So yeah, that's like a long-winded answer, but that's kind of how it came about.
I think
I love it.
Some of my favorite memories of you are when you're 4 or 5 drinks deep.
That's a lot.
And
That's my max. That's a good amount.
There's some fun night, like our wedding night when we did not leave the dance floor.
Yep.
And I like dancing. I don't think I feel as like connected to dance, or I don't feel like I'm really showing myself when I dance. But when I see you dance, I know for sure that that's what you're doing. Like you're just there and present. And maybe taking a few drinks is what gets you there. But I just like hearing you say that when you dance, you just feel like that's what you're loving to do in that moment. And then I, think to our wedding when you had, maybe an entire bottle of wine by yourself and you just danced. And it was so much fun. And it was such a beautiful night where you just existed and there was no one watching you. And it was your wedding. So if they were there for you and to love you. Yeah. But then I think of this New Year's Eve where we just like danced in this Airbnb that we rented, me, you, and my siblings and their spouses. And we turned on music and played music. And it was like 1:30 and I was begging you to go to sleep.
And I wouldn't let you turn the music off.
You wouldn't let me turn the music off. We danced for another hour. After I had already called it night, we were like, no, there's some more juice here. And you knew that there was more juice.
Oh, yeah. I'll get the dance floor popping.
If there's anybody who knows how to get a dance floor popping, it's you.
Which is so funny because I'm not a dancer at all.
Well, I think because I don't know if this comes off like negatively, but
no, it's okay.
Present a very like put together, structured like aura that is not a bad thing. So when the people around you see you let loose, they're like, fuck, like I can be whoever I want. This is incredible. I'll keep dancing. This is awesome.
Well,
that's funny.
You had said something about me in high school, how like I was this big, fun-loving, goofy guy that let people around me feel safe and comfortable to be themselves. To me, that's what the vibe you give off at karaoke nights or at New Year's Eve or at the wedding, where when you do let loose and you do fully embrace a part of yourself or a side of yourself that doesn't give a shit who's watching, everybody knows like, oh, if Maddie's doing it, like we're here for this. And it genuinely does create such an open and safe space for anyone to be themselves, which I think is why I love watching it, because I just love seeing you be fully embodied, which I know you said it's a buzzword, and it's kind of funny to think of a buzzword like embodied when you're 4 drinks deep. But
yeah,
that's genuinely how it feels, is you're just being exactly who you're supposed to be in that moment. Every time I see you dance or every time I see you on the dance floor going crazy or singing karaoke.
Yeah. I think I'm trying to get better at, or my goal would be, which I know is trying to also get better at not having to have a goal, but I think my goal is to be able to do that without needing something to like put my ego aside for me. Because I think the alcohol helps me put my ego aside.
Yeah.
And that's hard, obviously really hard for me to do naturally. And I want to get better at being the person who's like dancing in Pizza Hut without 4 drinks of
Maybe you could try like
Tito's and soda with lime.
you could try like maybe a different drug.
Ah,
Okay. Now
least it's
we're
not
onto
alcohol.
something. Yeah. But also, I don't know, if I need a couple glasses of wine to dance my butt off, like I'm also not worried about that.
And you don't feel guilt about it the next day. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
no.
like if you get drunk and then you feel guilty about it, it's like, okay, well, what was the purpose?
Yeah. I think some of that though is like a crutch for a sense of self that I want to feel enough like sure of myself and confident that I can look stupid and have fun doing it without needing the alcohol to make me not think about it. Like the alcohol is kind of the crutch that makes me not have to be anxious about what people are thinking of me. But yeah, that's the whole goal with play, is to not worry about what other people think and just be me in the moment. Can I ask you guys a question, or is this a one-way street?
it's 2-way, baby.
3-way.
Wow. Okay. We did already say we've all lived together, so let's not give any ideas.
Yeah.
We'll let that one die.
Well, I was gonna say we'll save that for the Patreon.
Even better. Oh my god.
I'm going to be able to put together an entire episode of just George making the Patreon joke.
Honestly, like sign me up. I'd pay for that. Like
Yeah, I just can't I just have a budget of those jokes. Just don't let me overspend my budget. And
No, you
I
haven't
think
even
we'll be
touched
fine.
it yet.
Really?
Yeah, you're great.
It's
They're
Monopoly
funny
money.
every time. Yeah, it's Monopoly money.
yeah, I just wanted to ask you guys, what's your current experience with play? Does it come natural? Do you have avenues to play? And what does play mean to you? Is it the same thing as what I'm describing, or do you see it as something else?
All right, I'll go first. Can I talk about my cat? Is that
Yeah.
okay? All right, cool. I'm gonna talk about my cat for a little bit.
Definitely.
Okay. So I have a cat. He's 4 years old. He's great. So something that he likes to do is go outside, and I've been trying to like provide an avenue for him to do that. But I live in an apartment complex, and there's no real way to just let him out and come back whenever he wants. So
Yeah.
I looked it up, and there's like a whole community of people that walk their cats. So I was like, okay, I'll try this out. And he's been like so open to it. He loves it. So I have a harness and I put him on a leash, and we go outside. And it's really great. And the just main distinction between a cat and a dog and the way they walk is that dogs walk and they'll like sniff a bush, sniff something for a bit, but they're like walking and they're going somewhere. He is on an adventure. So he will go from like a bush, sniff it around, roll in the dirt, pick his head up, see if there's any birds going around. There's no destination in sight for him. It's really cool to watch because I have to slow down. I have to stand there with him and watch him do nothing, and is what I'm perceiving.
Yeah.
And he is so content in these moments. I'll like watch him just slowly stroll. He'll see a little stick or branch sticking out, and he'll like just slowly, ever so slightly, brush his cheek against it and like make sure it's the best scratch possible. And then I'll go through and then be like, one more, and I'll slowly brush his cheek against it. And he's just not in a hurry at all. He's just experiencing the world in this moment. And it's, really inspiring to watch. And also when I juxtapose it to like when dogs walk by, he freaks out and goes into fight or flight mode. And he'll like run off or just he'll like do the whole cat, like lift his back, get kind of scared. So when I look at how he responds, knowing that there are, enemies out there are dogs, there's people that will get him scared. That like fight or flight is this close for him. And he's still that willing to go explore the world, knowing that like this could happen any moment. But like the world is like that worth exploring for him. It's like, it's just really cool to watch. And so I've learned a lot about like being present from my cat because he just is so content in the moment to just like view the world and be like an audience for it. So I've learned a lot about play and just like being present from my cat, honestly.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
What pairs play and being present for you? I think it's beautiful that you've, somehow made those like synonyms, but in what way do you think those two things are related?
When I look at the opposite of play, it's like it's adulthood, and a lot of adulthood is planning for the future. It's like it's avoiding those fight or flight moments as much as possible. Those are the worst thing possible. So you should build as many resources and like safeguards to avoid that at all cost. So when I look at like play and like being present, like fight or flight is a part of the human experience. And it's okay if you have an experience like that. Like, yeah, it's a little uncomfy, but you are on the precipice of life in that moment. Like that is being human and like being a part of the world around you. You're not just like so removed from life that you have all of these like resources protecting you from like the harshness of reality, even though that can also be like the most beautiful parts of reality. So play and like being present, I guess I just look at the opposite of play, and it's not being present.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree.
I also like that what you're saying about that. It makes me think that increasing your tolerance for play means increasing your tolerance for being able to, tolerate that fight or flight, being able to tolerate really
The
uncomfortable. Risk. Yeah. Like looking at your cat who he's in the moment, but he knows if at any moment something happens, he'll live through it. Like he can tolerate the discomfort. So like being able to play is being able to tolerate discomfort, which may be what we've all been doing our whole lives is like avoiding discomfort.
And like going back to, you shared this story a few episodes ago about your improv, like one of your first sessions, you were on the stage and you had nothing to say because it was improv and you were really scared, and it activated like your fight or flight in a way, but you got over that experience, and like so much growth has happened as a result of that. And that's been really cool to witness.
Yeah, I feel stupid because all I want to talk about is improv because that's exactly how it feels, is especially even like with your cat, like your cat is just there. It's just living. Like it's not worried about what could happen. It's just going to scratch its face on this stick.
He's not bored.
Yeah, exactly. So when I think about play, I'm thinking about like letting loose. I think if I were to answer the question, it's a lot more about like judgment, I think, or self-judgment. Maybe like harshness of self. Like when I'm having a good time and sometimes I'll like catch a glimpse of myself playing, or I'll catch a glimpse of myself being present or not paying attention to what other people are thinking of me or judging me. I'll feel really insecure about it. I'm like, oh shit. Like someone might have just noticed me not being absolutely on top of how I'm presenting myself to everybody. And it scares me. That terrifies me, or it has always terrified me. But a broken record, improv, has like really helped me work on that of like, I just am being this way. I am doing this. Like I have no other way to be than to respond to what you just said. And like, I don't have time, or I don't have the ability to pay attention to how I'm presenting myself as well as what you just said and responding to it. So it's like, I can either choose one or the other. So the reason I had the panic attack the first time is because I was so aware of what people were seeing out of me that I didn't know what I was going to say. But now I've come to a point where I'm able to focus in on the conversation and the situation and not think about what other people are looking or thinking of me, and instead think about what was just said to me. What can I contribute? What having more curiosity about my life and the situations that I'm in. But that has to do with improv. That has to do with singing in front of people, with karaoke. That has to do with dance. Like sometimes when we dance in the kitchen, I get embarrassed. I get self-aware, and I'm, again, catch a glimpse of myself letting loose and think, that's what Maddie's seeing right now. Like you see me looking like that, and I was not intentionally putting together something for you to look at. You were just perceiving me.
Yeah.
And I don't like it. It feels really uncomfortable.
Something I've noticed about the two of us is I'm more comfortable dancing in the kitchen, the two of us, and you're more comfortable dancing at a wedding in front of 100 people.
I think it's because I am very aware in that moment, dancing in front of 100 people at a wedding, how I'm being perceived. I'm like, I'm doing that as a sort of performance, which it's honest and earnest, and I mean it. Like, I'm not a fake person, but I'm also in control of how people see that and perceive me.
Yeah, and you know the moves. Like, you know,
Yes.
like, oh, if I do this funny thing, people will think I'm that funny guy on the dance floor.
But there will be a time where the way I imagine people are perceiving me is at a crossroads with how I'm actually, like, again, it always has to do with like seeing a picture of myself or seeing myself in the mirror where I'm like, oh, that's what I look like right now. And then I get existential and I have to go sit down because I think it's like, if I can't be in control of how people are seeing me, it's very uncomfortable. And that's why play has always been very uncomfortable, because it's just about letting loose and letting yourself be the way you are, unencumbered. So now I'm trying to get better through improv, through karaoke, through this podcast, of being the way I truly feel like I am, not being the way I think people want to perceive me, or I want people to perceive me. And it's hard to know the difference. And I think most times it's probably a little bit of both. Like, probably a little bit, this is the way I want to be, and probably a little bit, this is the way I want you to think I am. But there are times where I absolutely escape the perception part and I'm just being, and that's really freeing and really fun. And that's what I want to pursue more of, because that to me seems like the more honest me, the less presentative version of me.
Yeah.
And it's exciting. It's exciting when I do that and I'm comfortable with that. Doesn't happen very often, but when it happens, I feel like I'm learning something and growing in some way.
I think it's just really vulnerable for you.
Yeah.
And I think vulnerability can be hard for you.
It's scary.
It's anxiety producing. It makes me think of one of my best friends. This year we had a moment where, this is another, maybe like someday it will be a core memory, but she was having a really hard time and I was like, can I just hold you? And we laid in my bed for like hours and I just held her. And ever since then, like, that was so vulnerable, you know, but ever since then, that like level of vulnerability and trust we now have together has helped me like just be silly and play with her way more. Like, dance in front of her, say something stupid in front of her, just like cuddle on the couch with, you know, I can just like be human with her now. But it took a really vulnerable moment for me to then also unlock the like fun play side of the friendship.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a lot of things for you are just about the fear of vulnerability.
The word that comes to mind for me when I've activated play is when someone calls me a goober.
That's a great,
Yeah.
I love it because
A goofy goober?
yes. I love the idea that people didn't watch me be goofy and think he was either funny or wasn't funny. They watched me be goofy and were like, he's just a little goober. Yeah, like he's just enjoying himself. He's just being kind of funny, just silly. Like I didn't need them to laugh necessarily. I just it makes me just feel good knowing there's no judgment associated with the like actions I've done. And honestly, like Jack and I's relationship, being the little brother, I loved being in that role of just kind of like poking and prodding at you, just trying to get you to like be a little frustrated, but just like toe that line of like what's funny and what also kind of gets under your skin, and be a little goober.
just
like
being a little goob.
I just, that role for me, I feel a lot of safety in that. So when someone like says it, I feel very safe.
That's really funny that you say that, because watching you at karaoke nights
Yes.
is you just being a little goob.
Yeah. Like
You're just like, you'll like raise your hands and you'll like dance back and forth. Like, you're always front stage giving people like the best vibes. And you're just a goob. And in a way that I like really genuinely, I feel like I see you and who you're being in that moment. And it's really fun to see.
The other thing I liked about what you said was, I think both of you touched on this, how kind of that like binary that's created of good or bad keeps you from playing because you want to be good, or you're like worried about how you'll be perceived as good or bad or judged. And so I think another way to try to explore, experiment with playing is to not see things as like this or that, and try to like divorce yourself of some sort of binary and just like be. Yeah, just be. Like, it's not good or bad. It just is. You just are.
And like going back to the goober thing, like I look at it so often in the binary of was I funny or not funny?
Yeah.
And activating play, or in this sense, activating goober mentality.
Goober mode activated.
Goober mode.
Power up.
Or my new phrase has been menace. Like whenever I'm just a menace, I activate menace mode.
I like it.
But that's kind of your word for non-binary. That's your word for not good, not bad. But menace mode.
Menace.
Yeah.
Okay, a menace is bad. Like, let's
Menace sound bad.
Yeah, that's when I'm like getting under your skin a little too much, and I'm just being a menace.
You've gone from goober to menace.
Yeah, maybe that's the next
George,
level.
your goober dipped into menace today.
But it like divorces the binary of like was I funny or not funny, because it doesn't matter. I was just being myself. And I do struggle with that binary because I look at it like I like to know if someone thought I was funny or not, or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that's about all the time we have for this episode. But that was really fun, Madie. That was really great. How do you feel about that?
Great.
Yeah.
It was very fun.
Good.
Yeah.
Glad to have you on.
Dare I say, felt like play.
She said it.
And I would, if you will, that is that which binds us.
I will.
All right.
I will.
Thank you.
And also, we have an Instagram page. If you want to give us a little follow, that'd make me feel happy.
And my Venmo is George _
Okay, see you guys.